Good morning. Hope you're good today. This wonderful Monday morning. Hope you've got a great week planned. It's nice to get through last week. Last week was a busy one. We had a lot going on with school starting in Mississippi State and college lunch yesterday at church, and just all manner of things. And so it's great to kind of get through to have lived through my first opening of school at Mississippi State. So we survived. Now it's kind of moving into the regular patterns. If you don't know how church works, you tend to have patterns. And right now we're gonna move into a pattern of the life of the church this semester. I'm looking forward to some Bible studies this week. I'll have a couple of them. I'll teach a morning Bible study at 10 o'clock here at the church, and then a Wednesday night Bible study as part of our Wednesday night programming. So I'm looking forward to a lot of good Bible studies, a lot of good stuff going on here. So if you're looking for a place to plug in, obviously we'd love to have you at Starkville first. Today we're going to start. We talked about doing Daniel. So we're going to start Daniel today. We're going to read all of Daniel 1. And Daniel 1 also gives a little bit of background, but just so you know, Daniel is a book of prophecy. Um, and Daniel has with it. So we mistake prophecy for future telling. And some of prophecy is future telling, but not all of it. Not all of it. And Daniel is one of the book. Most of prophecy is just speaking the word the Lord's laid upon your heart. So a lot of prophecy is dealing as much with what's happening in that moment as it is dealing with what the future holds. But Daniel's one of the books that has a lot of what the future holds prophecy, apocalyptic language, language that is referenced in Revelation and other New Testament books. In fact, one of the words that we see in Daniel, and we'll talk more about this when we get to it, is a phrase, the Son of Man. And that's an actual title that Jesus uses for himself in the Gospels. So Daniel is a prophecy written by a young Jewish man who is in exile in Babylon. And you'll get that context today about what that means. But the Babylonian exile is a formative time for Israel, for the Jewish people. A lot of things happen in exile. Since they could not worship at the temple, the teaching of the law becomes a primary thing. And you have these teachers of the law that interpret the law and that give interpretations of how the law should be carried out. These teachers of the law became the Pharisees. Since you couldn't sacrifice the temple, that was the domain of the priest and the Sadducees. The Pharisees really arose in this time and became the formative voice for much of Judaism. Judaism itself. In the time of exile, the nation of Judah was taken into exile. And the word Judah was shortened to the word Jew. During exile, a lot of the Old Testament law and books were compiled or canonized. So, in some ways, the exile was the harshest time for Israel and the Jewish people, but it was also one of the more formative times. And isn't that the way it goes? Sometimes the most formative times in our lives are the hardest. That's where we often grow and develop the most, is in difficult times. So let's read Daniel 1. The third year of the reign of King Jehoiakim of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord let King Jehoiakim of Judah fall into his power, as well as some of the vessels of the house of the Lord. These he brought to the land of Shinar, and he placed the vessels in the treasury of his gods. Then the king commanded his palace master Ashpenazar to bring some of the Israelites of the royal family and of the nobility, young men without physical defect and handsome, versed in every branch of wisdom, endowed with knowledge and insight, and competent to serve in the king's palace. They were to be taught the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the royal rations of food. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they could be stationed in the king's court. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah from the tribe of Judah. The taskmaster gave them other names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah he called Shadrach. Mishael he called Meshach. And Azariah he called Abednego. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the royal rations of food and wine. So he asked the palace master to allow him not to defile himself. Now God allowed Daniel to receive favor and compassion from the palace master. The palace master said to Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king. He's appointed your food and your drink. If he should see you in poorer condition than the other young men of your own age, that would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel asked the guard, whom the palace master had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please let test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. If you can then compare our appearance with the appearances of the other young men who eat the royal rations and deal with your servants according to what you observe. So he agreed at this proposal and tested them for 4 days. At the end of the 4 days, it was observed that they appeared better and fatter than all the young men who'd been eating the royal rations. So the guard continued to withdraw the royal rations and give the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. These 4 men God gave knowledge and skill in every aspect of literature and wisdom. Daniel also had insight into all visions and dreams. At the end of the time that the king had set for them to be brought in, the palace master brought them to the presence of Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with all of them. Among them all, no one was found to compare to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they were stationed in the king's court. In every manner of wisdom and understanding concerning which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than the magicians and the enchanters of his whole kingdom. And Daniel continued there to the first year of King Cyrus. So we see here Daniel and the other young men, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We see them in Babylon. And we talked last week about the imprecatory Psalms, and one of my favorite imprecatory Psalms is Psalm 137, which is a prayer of anger, a psalm of anger towards Babylonians who had destroyed everything. When I talk about Psalm 137, there are three things that define the Jewish people, that they knew they were God's people. How do they know they were God's people? There's three reasons. One, they had the temple. One, two, they had the land, and three, they had the covenant of circumcision. So how do we know that we're God's people? We got three things. We got the temple, we got the land, we got circumcision. Well, now Babylon destroyed the temple, taken them from the land, and has taken from them circumcision and their own names. So Nebuchadnezzar has taken from them their identity. He's taken from them the food they are to eat and given them royal rations. He has taken their Jewish names, which are tied to their circumcision, and given them Chaldean names. So he's taken this identity that they have in God and said, no, 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 you're going to be this now. And so what did Daniel and the others do? They maintained their identity. In a time of exile, in a time where everything felt upended, they kept their identity. They kept their names, but they also kept the food and they were keeping their traditions. We live, well, as Christians, we always are in exile, for this world is not our home. And so we live in time of exile as Christians because we are not in our true home now. But we do know that God is in this world as well. So as the hymn goes, this is my Father's world. But our truest home is in heaven. And so now as Christians, we should always feel out of place from this world somewhat. We should always feel a little outcast. We should always feel a little out of sorts. It shouldn't quite fit. Our values, our virtue, our wisdom should be a little out of step and out of place in the world we live in, the times we find ourselves in. And so we should keep ourselves rooted deep in who we are, in our truest identity in Jesus, because we can feel out of place a lot in this world. This world can make us out of place when we value people over money, when we value relationships over ideology, when we value love over hate, when we value the path of Jesus over the path of self-gratification, when we value sacrifice over exaltation. We're out of step in this world. We're out of place. And that's a good thing. We should be. We should be out of place. There's one of my favorite songs by the old late Christian songwriter Rich Mullins. It's called "In the Land of My Sojourn." I will sing, I will sing this song in the land of my sojourn. We're just pilgrims passing through. So while we're doing that, while we're sojourning in this land, I think the lessons of Daniel and these other three can be an example. Let's hold on to who we truly are. Let's hold on to Jesus Christ in all things. Let's find ourselves deeply rooted in Him in times and days and places where things may seem out of sorts. Let's hold on extra tight to Jesus because He's our truest identity. No matter how crazy the world may be, for holding on to our identity in Jesus Christ in this our time of exile, we'll find life. We'll find life. Even when things seem a little out of step, we'll find life. So we got a lot of good stuff to learn from Daniel. And tomorrow we're going to pick up with Daniel chapter 2. So hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the morning. Thanks.